Hello, everyone. My name is Amber, and I'm with Two Bound Books.
And my name is Shaylee. We are so glad you're joining us today. We are a podcast dedicated to reading and sharing incredible books, supporting authors and growing their platforms, and helping readers discover their next favorite read.
Here on Two Bound Books, we are going to be diving into spoiler-free overviews of a book, explore its characters, themes, tropes, and then wrap up with our final thoughts, favorite quotes, and we want to leave you excited to jump into both the books we're talking about today.
Speaking of both books, this is the first episode that we are doing that is not just an intro episode to who we are. So to give you guys a little idea of our format, we had so many incredible inquiries of people who submitted their books, authors that are starting out and wanted ARC readers and to be featured, and we just did not have the space to feature every single one.
We had over 40 entries.
Over 40 entries, but we did decide to be able to highlight a little bit more. We're going to do short 3 to 5 minute highlights of books each episode, and then the remainder of that episode will be dedicated to a larger, deeper dive for other books. So, Amber, do you want to talk about our highlight today?
Absolutely. I'm excited to highlight this book. It is The Waking of Storm and Flame by N.A. Betts. Alira Verbrand, the Princess of Namale, savored the scholastic tranquility of her life until the Illyrian Empire descended from the north. On the eve of battle, Alira is drawn into the center of a war that has raged for 1,000 years. Unveiled as a fate, the descendant of a legendary bloodline, destiny is thrust upon her. Alira must navigate her mortal obligation of defending her people from an empire who means to destroy them, while finding others like her to awaken a rebellious god that may be her last hope. At the heart of her worry, an ancient record foretells the return of their creator, he who shall pass a final judgment over both humanity and the gods, one they may not survive. The Waking of Storm and Flame is the first book in N.A. Betts' The Fates of Aten series, and it is the author's debut novel. It is an epic fantasy adventure, and it is perfect for fans of Danielle L. Jensen's A Fate Inked in Blood, and those who enjoyed the elemental magic of M.L. Wang's The Sword of Kagan.
Okay, cool. What did this book remind you of the most?
So world building wise, Lord of the Rings, along with the you shall not pass energy that the battles and all of that, definitely sword fighting. You got the mystical powers. It was highly entertaining.
I love Lord of the Rings. That will always have my heart. Except, this is a book podcast, but I've only seen the movies. I haven't read the books.
Shame.
Yeah,
Shame.
I'll have to read those books because I did love the movies. About how many pages approximately is this guy?
It runs around 373 pages, so a relatively quick read if you are a quick reader.
And how quick of a reader are you, Amber?
I finished it in about 5 hours.
She's not normal. It's okay.
I kind of speed read.
All right. So, that's great. Anything else you want to add to that storyline?
It's very smooth with tight-knit characters, and it's highly entertaining storytelling. And if you like action-packed stories, lots of characters, mystical powers, and sword fighting, then this is a story for you.
Sounds like all of our fantasy friends would love it.
Absolutely.
All right. So, jumping into our deeper dive, we have something exciting happening today. We have one of our authors joining us, and we are talking about the non-magical Declan Moore.
Yes.
So, do you want to go ahead and let's move people into the next phase of this podcast?
Absolutely. So, we have the non-magical Declan Moore, written by Mr. Nathan Taylor. And this book was truly what made me text Shaylee and was like, oh my gosh, Shaylee, you need to be either on the ARC team for this book or we need to find a way to be able to read it. And then she was like, Amber, you've already put way too many books on my TBR. I'll get to it eventually. And I was like, okay, sounds good. So then 3 months later, I was like, hey, Shaylee, we should start a podcast. And she's like, okay, sounds good. And I was like, and I know the first book that we can do. And I'm like, I'll reach out to the author now. And so I reached out to Nathan, and he has graciously agreed to be our guinea pig. And he's also here for an interview today. And so I'm very excited to be able to discuss this book with him live on our podcast.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Amber likes to add 5,000 books a day to my TBR. And so I've just started leaving them in my Facebook unread messages to refer back to at another time. But I will say that this was a good suggestion. I'm so glad we did it.
That other time is never going to come. I've just come to terms with that, but I'm happy this one made it.
Well, do you want to provide our listeners with a spoiler-free dive into what this book is about?
Absolutely. So the non-magical Declan Moore follows a 17-year-old lamp, a person lacking all magical potential, named Declan Moore. Declan is the great, so on and so forth, grandson of the famed Armand Moore, that unified the country of Urima, setting the country into its golden age. The book starts with Declan being outed for being a lamp to his school right as they are about to go and apply for Mag Ed colleges. Declan's best friend, Ace, also known as Horace, is one of the best students at Armand Moore Preparatory School. And while Ace goes to apply for colleges, Declan gets to go and to sit in a classroom with other lamps and ponder why he is here in the first place. Declan gets injured, and when Horace comes to help him to the nurse, he accidentally drops a college application to King's College, one of the most prestigious colleges in Urima. And when Declan fills it out for himself, he unexpectedly hears back the next day. And he gets his letter in front of Horace, and Horace is furious with Declan for applying to the one college he truly wanted to go to, as Declan has no potential. Hence the lacking all magical potential.
Your favorite term in the whole book.
Oh, 100%. It's on like page 2 or page 3. It like cracks me up every single time. And I have it highlighted, and like every single time it comes up, it cracks me up. So Declan is rejected from King's College, and he goes home embarrassed, downtrodden, and broken, only to see uniformed people, the Fatesmiths, loading metal statues of his Fareezed parents into vans, along with his house being very nearly destroyed. Declan is terrified and doesn't know what to do, only to run forward and try to get to his parents. And when he was blasted through the upper story of his house, he somehow ends up getting united with Luck and unlikely friends from King's College, and is on his path to self-discovery. The adventure progresses as whole communities are turned into Fareezed metal statues, and Team Good does what they can to stop the Fatesmiths, Team Bad, ending up in the unlikely hands of King's College, where we see Declan through his lowest of lows, and as the Fatesmiths take over while he is on a protected island. What happens to Urima when all seems lost?
Ooh. All right. So I think before we go any further, we will bring Nathan Taylor himself on and learn a little bit more about this book and the stories. So Nathan, welcome.
Thank you for having me. This is amazing. It's so cool to hear your own stories that have lived inside your head for so long being talked about on a platform like this. So thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. We're excited to have you.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. Nathan, we want to ask you a few questions that our listeners were dying to hear.
Really quick, before we get into those questions, though, we can't help but notice you have an accent. Where, by chance, are you from?
Yes, that's right. I am Australian. So I'm right on the other side of the world where it is currently very warm and very sunny. And I'll try to temper the Australian accent as much as I can.
You're fine.
That's okay. As long as I'm understandable.
You definitely are. It's nice and chilly over here in Washington State. So we're living vicariously through you with the warm weather. All right. So we're obviously talking about the non-magical Declan Moore today, which we are super excited. Can you tell us, was this the first book that you wrote, or is this down the line a little bit?
So this was the first kind of big novel length project.
Okay.
Before I'd started this whole series, I had tried a bunch of novels, gotten 3 or 4 chapters in, and then lost steam. So I'm a teacher by trade, and I had this class of kids who didn't like to read.
Mm.
So I started this project where I thought, I'm going to write a story, and they're not going to know it's me, but I'm going to write it about them. The plot is they show up at school and everyone has vanished, and it goes on from there. So they were all characters. I would write a couple of chapters here and there, and I would post a page up on the whiteboard each day. And on days when I was sick, I would have a teaching assistant do it for me, and I did everything I could to make it look like it wasn't me. And I had this captive audience who wanted to know what happened, and I kind of put myself in this situation where I had to finish the book. So that wasn't a huge novel or anything. That was a 30,000 word novella when it was done, but I got through it. We printed them all a copy at the end of the year, and they found out that I was the mystery author. But after that, I just caught the writing bug. I learned that I can finish a project if I have a plan and if I just keep chipping away at it every day. So since then, I've done 3 books, and I'm currently in the midst of writing the 4th.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. You sound like a phenomenal teacher and one that I would have loved to be in your class.
And the best type of audience is a captive one.
Yes, for sure.
I was a teacher too.
That's exactly right.
Yes. So what inspired the story behind this book?
So this was a mix of things, and it's probably all the stories that I love. So things like The Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, that mix of kind of your old standard fantasy and the more contemporary stuff. And I probably felt like I could write more to the contemporary because we all live in the contemporary world, and I don't have to know, how to look after a horse or how to sharpen a knife or how to cook by campfire. I can use all the things I know about the modern world. But the actual seed for the character for Declan himself, that came from a Reddit writing prompt.
Oh,
And it was
really?
along the lines of, you apply for magical college knowing that you have no power, only to get a letter back saying that you're immensely powerful. And I thought, that would be interesting to do. And then the other side of it is kind of this analogy for climate change, where you have these giant magical storms raging. And that came about from conversations with some of the older members of my family who are probably quite staunch in their conservative views, and these attitudes of, we're not too worried about, why do we worry about the world in 10 years when we're just making sure we have enough food on our table until the end of the week, people who are in those hard circumstances. And that kind of dynamic of everyone's got the right motivations, everyone seeing themselves as the hero of their own story or doing the right thing by them. And when those motivations intersect and have conflict in that, that creates a really rich place for some really cool stories to grow. Because if you think you're the hero and the villain thinks they're the hero, neither of them are going to back down, and they're all going to have a really good justification for why they're doing what they're doing. And it kind of falls to the reader to decide, who is right, who is wrong, what do I think of this story? And that's the kind of stuff I love to read too, that really makes me think.
This is making so much sense.
Oh my gosh. And no, and it gets even better like as you go throughout the series or the saga. I'm not even kidding you. Like everyone is so morally gray in this saga. It is like you have so many mic drop moments just throughout it that I love it. It's so good.
Okay, so Nathan, do you have any quirky writing rituals that help you get into a creative flow?
I wish I did. I'm a dad. I have 3 kids, and I've got a little cavoodle that's basically a 4th kid. I think you call them cavapoos over there.
Call them what?
A cavapoo, a cavalier poodle.
Yes. Yep. That is what we would call it.
Yeah. So if I say cavoodle, that's what I mean. But he's a very needy dog. But writing time is really sparse for me. So any spare moment I can steal for writing, I do that. I've kind of had to train myself to read the last few paragraphs of what I did in the last session and then jump straight in. And a lot of my writing time, especially for the 2nd and 3rd book in this series, was just done on the floor at night in my daughter's rooms while they fall asleep because they were scared of the dark.
Aww.
So if I'm there with the light of the laptop, that's kind of their night light. And I'll growl at them to be quiet, and then I'll do a bit of writing. and then I'll growl again because they've started talking, and eventually they'll fall asleep and I'll lose track of time, and it'll be 11 o'clock, but I'll have 1,000 words done. So
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
That's great.
Um, how old are your kids?
so I've got an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 11-year-old.
So you're
And then,
busy.
yes, very busy.
Are they all girls?
No, my oldest is a boy, and then I've got the 2 girls beneath. So
Awesome. That's great.
we've got the mix.
So how do you approach developing your characters?
So with plot, I'm very much an outliner, but for the characters, it's very much, it starts with their motivation, and then I try to tie them as much as possible into people I know,
Okay.
because to make a character feel real, you can put down these are their positive traits, these are these negative traits, but unless that doesn't work for me, unless I can actually put it to this is a person I actually know and all the nuances of that person. But my characters aren't really an exact copy. It's more like a blend of 2 or 3 different people. And then you kind of tie that in with this is the motivation behind why this character is doing what they're doing. And over time, they tend to become these living people. At least in my brain, it's like, I know they've done studies where people who read fiction see characters, the parts of the brain light up just the way you do as you're talking about friends.
Yeah.
And these characters have been living in my head for, I think, 6 years now since I started that first draft. So
Wow.
it's a bit odd, but they really do feel real in some ways.
I'm worried to ask who the inspiration was for Lyle.
I think we've all met that person in one way or another.
Yes.
Oh, 100% we have.
Yes. So when you find or when you're looking for inspiration and you find that creative block, do you have ways to pull yourself out of the creative block, or things that you can do to encourage the writing creativity to come back?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because for a lot of the early time when I was writing, I was always thinking, looking ahead, maybe the idea isn't good. Maybe I need to come up with something better. And what I've learned, and what I'm still learning, is that if I'm hitting a stage where I don't feel like writing, or the words aren't coming easily, it's because I'm trying to basically push a heavy stone up a hill. So I need to go back and I need to have a look at where have I gone in this writing where I've lost the excitement, or where the characters are doing something that I probably feel is a bit plain or is taking too long to do. Because I've written so many chapters that I've thrown away of the characters just having a conversation or walking around or sitting in a room doing nothing, where it's like, I've got writer's block because this has just been 3 boring chapters of people sitting around. So you have to turf all that, go back to when the story is exciting, and then keep that momentum going.
We appreciate that as readers, because I've definitely had books that I've read where I'm like, I feel like nothing's happened in a while and I'm getting bored. So your book did not do that for me. It kept me on my toes the whole time.
I definitely have DNF'd a few that are like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do need those slower parts, especially after a big action scene to kind of reflect on it. But if you tie 3 of those together, it becomes that book that you put down and then never pick up again. That's right.
Yeah. So to kind of end our interview portion before we jump into some deeper discussion about the book, what is the best advice that you've ever received as an author?
This changes every time someone asks me, but I guess today's answer would be, I'll do 2. I have to do 2.
Okay.
One is, it's from Patrick Ness, and it was at a conference that I went to not too long ago, and it was, I can't teach you how to write, only how I write.
Mm.
So it's that idea of writing is a really personal thing, and we all do it our own way, and you can get all the advice in the world, but whenever you're getting writing advice from others, it's really important to stick with what resonates with you, and then not be afraid to say, no, that doesn't work for me. Because I think a lot of us, especially when I started out, you read these writing books and you feel like this is the way I have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So just that idea of, yes, you have to find your own path. And the other thing is just finish the book.
Just finish it.
Just finish the book. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. The first draft just has to be finished. That's its only job. There are, for every successful author out there, and by successful I mean someone who's finished a book, there's probably 100 people who are stuck rewriting the first chapter or stuck rewriting the first half of the book because they just haven't finished it. And from experience, it is so much easier to go back, being able to see the whole story and make the changes then than mucking around with edits while you're writing. So just finish the book.
I love that.
Me too. That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about yourself. To finish up our time with you, we would love to dive a little bit deeper into the non-magical Declan Moore. So I'm going to turn it back over to Amber to kind of lead us into this.
All right. So one of my favorite key themes in the story, and that I just absolutely loved, is the dangers of ignorance. And you see it in every single person because as you were saying in your where you got your inspiration from, is everyone is ignorant to something and everyone is the hero in their own story. And so you see this throughout the entire saga. And so, and as the series continues, you gradually get more information that comes out. And it's interesting the difference from knowledge versus ignorance that comes through there, because you have very smart characters that are written in there and they are exceptionally ignorant, because you have Laura Finn and then Katie and like all of those who just their interactions as you go throughout the saga. And so there were many points throughout this where I was grabbing my hair and yelling at the characters to get their heads out of the sand and just to listen to the other side. And like the more that you read, the more you realize that there isn't just a team good and a team bad. It's more like everyone is team morally gray. And you're seeing the different sides transform the story and how things are truly coming together. And so, and I love this book. I like enough so that I've now read it twice. And I can't leave more than one review for it. So sorry. That being said,
we have our 2Bound Books account too that we'll leave.
I already did. I did it on my personal and I did it on 2Bound Books. And so I love this book. However, there's one character that is such a bully, Lyle. And on the first read through, I almost stopped reading just because of them. And it quite literally, like the amount of anxiety that she caused through the entire read was like astounding to me, because as you stated, like we all have that interaction with that person. Like it hints back to someone that we know. And
yeah, see, I just wanted to see her taken down. I wanted her to be taken out by someone magical.
And there are those characters that are not just team morally gray. She is a true team bad. And so, but this book met and exceeded my expectations, as it was also my first experience as an ARC reader. So I was very excited about that. And having read the other two that are currently out as well, with the fourth one coming out at the end of summer, early fall of 2025, I'm excited to say that the books just get better and better as the story progresses.
Awesome. So Nathan, do you want to add to or share pieces without giving too many spoilers away about this book for our listeners?
It's really hard to talk about the book without giving spoilers away, because I'm so close to the book. Things that I just take for granted as, oh yeah, this is just the reality of the story. So I probably won't talk too much to it. But I loved what you said about the dangers of ignorance there, because that's definitely a theme. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely something, I guess, that when we're reading books, you know, I read books to escape, but I also love books that kind of act as, I guess, either inspiration or a cautionary tale without hitting you over the head with it.
Yes.
And, you know, there's one character who returns again unexpectedly at the end of book 2, and who's a big part of the third book. And a big motivation of the way I wrote that character is the dangers of being too sure of yourself.
Yes.
And being confident that this is the only way that it has to be. So, you know, I really love the continuation of seeing where these themes go. And I'm so excited for the fourth book to be done, because it ties everything together. There's scenes that I can see in my head towards the end that I'm just like, if you saw the Avengers movies, that kind of, or showing up at Wakanda, or those big moments
Yes.
that stick in your mind. This is the kind of thing that I'm writing towards. So I'm so excited to get towards that. And, it's just so great to hear that these books are resonating with readers like yourself and with others.
Absolutely.
That moment, by the way, that you were talking about where the unexpected character pops back up. I'm usually relatively good at predicting what happens. And that came so far out of left field. My mouth, my jaw hit the floor. I was like totally I was shook.
Yeah. So, Nathan, out of curiosity, are you self-published or are you working with a publisher?
No, I am self-published. So I mentioned before I was a teacher. I'm actually a teaching principal. So I'm in a teeny tiny school, like less than 20 kids. So I actually spend a few days a week teaching and then a couple of days a week doing the principal work.
Wow.
And my time is really scarce and my ability to stick to any deadlines is really scarce. So my decision for independent publishing is really about having control of timelines and being able to work at my own speed and not putting that pressure on myself to almost have another job when the job I do is my biggest priority. So independently published and very happy with how it's all gone so far.
That's
I love
awesome. Super cool. You've touched on it a little bit, but to ask you directly, is there anything specific that you would want readers to take away from this book?
We've probably discussed it well enough. Very much the dangers of ignorance is a big one. And just that, you can carry it into life about, I don't know if you've seen the show Ted Lasso, but all about being curious, not judgmental.
Yes.
I think that's wise words that we can take anywhere and that we can find in many books, but it's definitely something that would have helped my characters out a lot if they had been curious and not judgmental from the get-go. But I guess then they would have missed some exciting adventures too.
Yes.
Definitely.
I think a lot more people would also be alive. But that's also what I love about you, by the way, is that you're not afraid to kill off a character.
As long as it means something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any upcoming projects or future books that you're excited about? It sounds like book 4 of this saga is coming out. Do you have anything else in the works?
Yeah, so book 4 is the big one. I can't do multiple projects at a time.
Right.
So my attention is fully focused on that. And after that, there are a few different avenues I could go. I've got an idea for something that's Australia based, that's set in that same world and that ties into it very loosely. So it could be a standalone series, or it could be something that readers who are still interested in that world can carry on to.
Awesome.
But, once you hit the second book, you see that there's very much an opportunity to write some prequel books from a long, long time ago in this universe. So that's something that I would also definitely be interested in. And then there's some ideas for some novellas around some kind of historical events that are alluded to, but aren't actually touched on in the books, because there's only so much that you want to read about what's happened in the past. You really want to focus on what's happening right now in the books.
Right.
So there's all these different directions I can go, and it's just going to be, once I finish, what direction do I feel like going in? And that's part of the beauty of being an independent author too, is you can make those decisions.
Yeah, for sure. You weren't kidding when you said you got that writer's itch.
Yeah. It's a good hobby, all you need is a computer or even a pen and paper and some quiet time. So
Oh my gosh. I loved writing growing up. I was a big writer, a big journaler. And I would write all the time, and it was my outlet, especially in my high school years. And as an adult, it became very intimidating to me. So I have not written in a very long time, but I still love, I do a lot of administrative work, and I like to craft words in that way as well.
Well, and that would be my question to you is, do you have any advice to those of us who were big writers back in the day, but then like you hit the adult world and you're like, oh, that's a big, scary profession.
Yeah, I think as long as as long as you're enjoying it,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and do it. Like, these things become as big as we make them to be. When I started writing this book, the non-magical Declan Moore, I wasn't writing it saying I'm going to publish this or anything like that. It's, I want to tell this story that's an amalgamation of the stories I love and that I want to see what happens as well. Because even though I write an outline for the plot, it's a very loose outline. It's very much each chapter gets a dot point, and sometimes the dot point is just figure out what happens between this and this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we come into it saying, I want to write a full novel and have it ready for the world and receive awards and all types of things, then that pressure will probably crush that ambition. But if it's just, I've got a free afternoon, I'm going to write something down,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's a lot easier to get your head around and do. So
Great.
Now, you don't know this yet, but last episode we talked about the usage of AI within the writing sphere. Do you use AI tools at all, or is it all from your brain?
no, it's all from my brain. I think the AI thing is really interesting. And I think a lot of authors are very worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen what the current AI can put out, and that puts a lot of my fears at rest, because there's, I don't know the exact number, but millions and millions of books on Amazon, and there's plenty of room to sink to the bottom for low effort writing that doesn't speak to people. So I think my job as an author is to write the best story I can that resonates with me and that excites me. And I think if it does that to me, then there's a good chance it'll do it to the readers, and it will naturally rise to the top. So I'm not too worried about it. And I think it's the kind of decision that every author needs to make for themselves, whether they use those tools or not. But I would like AI to make my dinners and do my dishes and do my laundry.
Same.
Writing is my passion. It's what I want to do. I don't want to be passing off the things that I love to do to computer software.
Yep.
I want to write.
I resonate with that. I like that.
Well, and I really appreciate it as well, just because like you have a lifetime reader in me. So like obviously what you're enjoying writing is speaking to not just yourself, but to others as well.
Yes, for
Thank
sure. So thank you so much, Nathan. Where can our listeners find your book? Because after this, I know that multiple of them are going to want to go download it and read it or purchase it. So where can they find the book at?
So it's primarily on Amazon. So you can search either the non-magical Declan Moore or the Winterthorn Saga, which is the title for the whole series. Or you can find me on nathantaylorwrites.com, and there's a book tab there that will take you, it has all the links. And on Facebook, it's just facebook.com/ntaylorwrites.
Perfect. Do you have an Instagram or any other social media?
I had, there's a bunch that are floating around, but I really found that, I was on TikTok, I was on Instagram, I was on Threads, I was on Blue Sky, and that was taking up too much writing time.
Mm-hmm.
So I really pared it back to, I send out a monthly newsletter that you can sign up to on my website, and I post things on Facebook when I have the mental energy to do so.
Okay.
But we're coming into the last term of our school year, which is all the final grades and report writing and things like that. So unfortunately, I haven't been doing much on social media this past month. But that's the big one.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. We will also include that information in our show notes for people to find you easily later. Do you have any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just a huge thank you for having me on to be a guinea pig. It's been really fun and really great. So thank you.
Agreed. And you've made it so easy for us as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. It was so nice meeting you.
No dramas. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So Nathan is just near and dear to my heart. He has constantly been one of those authors and books that I've turned back to, and when I got it this past year in August. So I've just absolutely adored communication with him, and he's been absolutely great with that as well. So I know I for sure appreciate him, and I appreciate him being our guinea pig as well.
Yeah, definitely. It was a great book. It was a great way to start this podcast for me. It really got me excited to dive into other new books and new authors out there that people aren't necessarily seen in the book talk world yet, or thrown across all the other social medias. And I hope that we can help these authors' names get out there just as much as the other ones being shown.
Most definitely. And he's definitely one of those one of those authors where like everything he puts out is like immediately going into my TBR.
Perfect. Well, we have another episode coming up in 2 weeks. Amber, do you want to let them know what our highlight book will be?
Our highlight book is going to be My Boss is the Devil by Ben Schenkman.
And our deep dive will be Genesis by Eric Still.
All right. So thank you everyone for listening, and make sure you follow both the podcast and Mr. Nathan Taylor.
All right. You can find us on at 2Bound Books on all of our social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. You can also follow us on Goodreads or join our book club on Fable. We look forward to connecting with you guys more. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.